Hello and welcome to the Games Jobs Direct podcast. My name is Abbie Dickinson and I am the marketing manager of Games Jobs Direct. In this, our brand new podcast, I'll be chatting to game studios to find out a bit more about what the studios are like behind the games. What is it really like to work in their game studio and what is important to them in terms of their culture, staff and atmosphere? This month, our podcast is with the fantastic Liverpool-based studio Firesprite. I sat down with Graeme Ankers, managing director and one of the original founders of the studio. We chatted about the heritage of game development in the Northwest, his favourite moments in the studio and the importance of bravery in creating amazing experiences. So where did the idea for Firesprite start?
Oh gosh, well I think it's sort of it's going back to the history of the North and the Northwest itself and Liverpool, and it's always been a kind of the cradle and the birthplace, we think, for the UK games industry. So going back to days like Psygnosis, Ocean Software over in Manchester as well. And they were the kind of golden age of gaming where we were delivering content across multiple platforms, and Liverpool, Manchester and the wider Northwest was really the sort of cradle of the UK games industry. And I think a lot of us who formed Firesprite actually go back as far as those days as well, so it's a real sort of mix of old school sort of talent as well as the new people that kind of have come in and joined us recently as well. So going back, God, how many decades is that now? That's like 3 decades worth of game development across this sort of area in terms of creating games and content that have gone out and sort of provided magical experiences for the world and on some of the world's biggest titles as well. So we've all kind of, the founding team really came from that environment, so we've all sort of made or been part of the developments of all of these big titles over the years. But a lot of our team came from Studio Liverpool, and what we were doing back there was creating content to show off what new platforms could do. So iconic titles like Wipeout particularly, which was a culturally significant title that kind of could probably only have been made in Liverpool and the Northwest, with the soundtrack and the graphic design and all those kind of the start of the dance scene that was very much part of this part of the UK, and that sort of resonated across the globe culturally with people, and kind of made almost like the first game to make games cool. And I think it was a real sort of passion project and pulled in some amazing things like the music, the graphic design, the actual quality of the experience, and it was just an awesome game. And I think our burning desire, or my burning desire, was to sort of almost kind of take all those experiences that we had, what we were really good at, which was shaping sort of new experiences and great games on new platforms, and take that into the future and the new generations. And that really was the driving kind of force behind Firesprite, to create something special that would really help define what the future of the games industry would be. And that kind of ties into our strategy of a studio really, which is we create strategically important games and experiences for platform holders. That's 3/4 of what Firesprite is. So if you've got a massive IP and you want a new chapter telling in that universe, or maybe you've got something coming in the future and you want an experience that's a game that's going to show off the key features of what that's about, that's why you come to me, and that's why you come to Firesprite, and that's what we do. We've been doing that pretty much for the past 30 years as a core team. So it puts us in a kind of incredibly nice and special position, if you like, as a studio, because we're trusted to work on these things. And then the other part of the business is, and this is something personally that's very important to me, is coming up with new IP and generating new ideas that we can take all these things that we're really good at and sort of deliver experiences off our own back. And I think culturally that really helps us as a studio, because that's you have to have that independent feel. Games is a passion business, right? The dream is to come into the business, create something from start to finish, right from the get-go, normally your own idea or something that you've come up with, create a very sort of sustainable business that delivers world-class experiences in games on new platforms and new things of the future. That's what we're about at Firesprite.
It's just a bit ambitious.
It is. I wish I had a white fluffy cat, sort of. But it's
world domination.
Yeah, world domination. Yeah, but no, I think it is a passion business, and it's all about creating the very best games that we can do, things that show off new technologies, new hardwares. That's what we do really at Firesprite. Yeah.
So when you're saying about Firesprite working on new technologies and wanting to showcase those, so I imagine you're quite a bit with VR then?
Yeah, I think it's everything. We do have, we're not, a lot of our kind of announced titles are around VR. And VR is awesome. It's a great media. It's kind of quite transformative because as everyone knows, you're putting the player into the experience for the first time, and that's a whole new language that we never really sort of had to deal with before. So actually immersing the player directly into the game. And that affects everything. It affects your game design. It affects even simple things like how you draw text on a screen, or how you stop somebody sort of how do they move through the environment comfortably, but the experience that you can create through virtual reality is truly magical. So you're transforming and taking somebody directly into a different space. So and we've done a lot of work in virtual reality with 3 releases on PlayStation VR and already. And we're still sort of looking in that area as well, and looking forwards into the future and where it might go. So it's a really exciting time for us, but we're not just exclusively a VR studio. So it makes up probably 60% of the projects that we do. Has a virtual reality component or is full VR as a game itself. But yeah, it's just, for us, it's about anything new technology wise, something that we can use, something that we can push our a new way of telling a story or a new game mechanic or something like that. Those are the things that excite us. I often joke that if somebody made a toaster with a screen on it that was really inventive, we'd push it onto that as well. But so new platforms excite us, but also new things around that in terms of inventive ways to new mechanics that might sort of propagate through mobile, or the way that you link mobile to consoles. So it's not just limited, I don't think, to one platform. We're an independent studio, and that's an advantage to us because we can look at different platforms, the way that they might combine and work together. And really, the main thing for us is, does that make for a better experience? And that's, a question we ask ourselves a lot, because that's what we're trying to sort of ultimately deliver is, what is that best experience? What is that magical, fun, experience that we can sort of get out there, and the highest quality we can possibly deliver is really important to us.
No, it must be really exciting and really interesting, not just sticking with the one platform and being like, this is where we're comfortable, this is where we sit. It's looking to see what the future is.
Yeah, and being brave is definitely what we're about. There is a sort of a great case for staying in that one area that you're comfortable with. But even early on for us, going back sort of like to one of the very first games and experiences that we ever delivered, which was the Playroom, we'd never made anything in a social or augmented reality kind of space. So, in fact, we've never really stuck within one genre throughout all the developments we've done as a studio. We're starting to sort of like, find our feet, particularly in the world of first person, and, like we did with Persistence. And I think that's an area that will always carry on with us now through the studio. But yeah, you've got to be brave. You've got to not be afraid to try new things and try new experiences, and that's, I think, part of the sort of special offering that we have at Firesprite as well, because sometimes you do come in and you're kind of locked into that one way of working on that one title, particularly at some of the big studios, and that's great, if that's what you set out to do. I think we're slightly different in that sense, so we'll sort of work very hard to experiment and try and push into new areas to create new games and experiences. So yeah, it's very much part of the drive for the studio to do that.
Managing director, you were part of the actual start of Firesprite.
I was indeed.
There was a starting group,
yes,
wasn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was myself and my 4 other founders who were my old management team. I was studio director of Sony PlayStation Studio Liverpool, and when we started Firesprite, it was myself as managing director. Chris Roberts, a technical director, Stuart Lovegrove is another technical director, Lee Carris, my art director, and Stuart Tilley, who was a game director at the time and is now creative director of the studio. There was just the kind of 5 of us really. We're about 200 yards down the road that way. I remember we had absolutely no contract whatsoever. We took on I remember signing a lease for 3 years, thinking, could be a bit risky. We're in about 3,000 square foot with just the 4 of us rattling around, building some desks from IKEA. Really the drive was, we'd all worked together for many years, particularly at Sony Studio Liverpool with PlayStation. And we just had a real desire to, carry on doing what we'd done really. We all love making games. We all sort of had done that over the years on some really, really big titles. And it was kind of a drive to say, well, actually, we're in a great place in terms of the Northwest and Liverpool. There's a big community of game developers here. There's still a lot of talent that have come from, the big studios that had set up here, and then sometimes they'd moved away or closed down or whatever. But the talent pool still kind of remains in the Northwest. Some people are working at sort of independent development teams. There's still some of the bigger studios left here as well. So you get a really nice balance and mix of people who come from sort of, the bigger teams like Traveller's Tales or Star Citizen over in Wilmslow, and then in the surrounding area you've got sort of, Sumo and Team 17 as well. So, the wider North has got some amazingly established big studios. And now in the Northwest, you've got this sort of really lovely dynamic of smaller, independent, 10 to 15 person teams, possibly even smaller than that. And then some studios, like ours are now as well, which is, going way over 100 plus people, which is, staggering achievement, and why I'm so grey and gaunt. It's a lovely dynamic. So you've got basically a lot of experienced people who've come from some of the world's biggest games still here in the area working. We've got an incredible amount of talent within Firesprite that have come from multiple different titles and studios, working from the likes of EA or Ubisoft, and we've created a really special kind of mix of incredible experience, as well as new people coming sort of, more or less straight from university or maybe a year past that university graduation. So we understand sort of, almost like both areas, if you like. So, we've got the sensibilities of production values and being able to run big productions, and that's a real special thing, and you need to have a bit of scale to be able to do that, and experience. But then you've also got the other side where something I'm quite proud of, it's still quite an independent feeling studio. So it's not like if you joined Firesprite you'd be a cog in a machine. Our teams are very sort of focused, independent feeling. You get to make decisions, and you get to see those decisions and sort of carry those responsibilities through the life of that project. And that's quite a unique thing, I think, even now in a studio of our size. You sort of actually join in a team, and you're going to be actually right there front line of the team, making calls and working with some incredible world class people.
About the culture of it in general, so you're saying about you've got lots of different levels of people coming in, like as graduates, you've got people who've been in the industry for 30 odd years. Yeah. It's like and obviously you've grown quite a lot over the last year, I'd probably say. So when you're saying you want to keep that sort of indie feel about it, how do you go about keeping that as you're growing? So I imagine it becomes more difficult.
It becomes more difficult. I think you've got to sort of really evaluate the structure of the studio as well, to sort of have a culture that's quite open. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the big things you've got to try and encourage. So, everyone should, feel like they've got a voice, and the way that we set up and structure our teams, we work in a system with product owner groups, but that isn't it's not a hierarchical thing, it's just a way of information that comes into those groups from anybody in the team at whatever level they're at on the team. You know, if we're either raising an idea or somewhere we can improve something, that all filters into that sort of almost like council, if you like, of a per project, and we have those per projects. And I think, you know, that works very effectively for us, because it means, you know, everyone's kind of got, you know, the ability to say, you know, if there's an improvement that's, you know, something that would improve the quality of the game, or, you know, the quality of a pipeline, for instance, or, you know, something technical along those lines, they've got the ability to kind of voice that and to raise that with the project council, if you like. We can see those sort of improvements carry through, you know, and we try and share a lot of those kind of learnings and lessons between the teams, because we are a multi-project studio as well. I mean, right now we're running 6 projects in development, so you know, which is, you know, again, going 100 plus, and we've got, you know, they're all at different stages of development. So you know, that's part of the kind of, you know, the ambition of the studio, and because we're not sticking inside of one genre, everyone's kind of pioneering really almost on the teams. So, you know, everyone kind of pushes forward, increases the knowledge of Firesprite, you know, as well as on that project. You know what I mean? You know, everybody's actively engaged in working and pushing and pioneering those areas forward, and it's, you know, it's to, you know, joining us, it's about being brave like that, and sort of not being afraid to kind of, you know, get involved, get engaged. And I guess, you know, what we offer to that is that independent feeling as a studio, even on a big team level, you know. And the other offer of that, you can have that independent feeling, you know, of a development studio, but you're also working on some of the biggest IP in the world and the highest profile sort of projects, you know, with some of the biggest platform holders in the world as well. We've got a lot to offer in terms of career development, and, you know, for people coming into the studio and, you know, getting experience on some of the world's biggest IPs, but then also that ability to move between projects, to create technology on a studio level, to move forward and, you know, basically sort of, you know, pioneer and learn and be brave. And I think that's quite an awesome offering, and I think it's something I've noticed with people joining Firesprite. That's what they absolutely love, you know. They come on board and it's like, well, you know, it feels like an independent studio. I get to have a lot of input into on a project level.
No, it does sound incredibly cool. I think that one thing you can hear from people, especially when they work in bigger companies, is that they only get to work on one project or one thing, and they get blinkered in that little sort of minute detail. They don't get to, they almost kind of lose sight about where they're fitting in the bigger project.
Absolutely.
So I think that if you've got lots of different projects going on and plenty of communication between people, it's only going to be a positive thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part, you know, speaking to the culture and sort of, you know, maintaining that. And the challenge is, you know, because we are growing and we are in a high growth cycle at the moment, you know, with a massively ambitious fluffy white cat plan for the future. So, and again, it's something a little bit like a game. It's something you've got to iterate on and, you know, keep tweaking and making sure that you're getting it right as you know, the months go by, basically, and not being afraid to change things.
Yeah, so it's not about sitting on your laurels and saying it's good as it is. It's about going and reassessing.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're always in a cycle like that. So and that's a good thing, I think.
No, definitely, I completely agree. I think that in any part of a studio that'd be a good thing, because there's no point sitting and stagnating. I mean, like you've been saying with the new technologies and everything coming through, you can't sit and be comfortable all the time.
No,
You've got to be pushing forward.
And you know, it's not, you know, we've had a successful new IP launch, so, you know, and a lot of big studios, and this is no criticism of that at all. You can sometimes lock into a formula, right, which is what happens, and then you just kind of chip away at that. And I think with us we're slightly different, so, you know, because we will always assess that and think, well, you know, say even with the Persistence, which was an awesome game, and it, you know, commercially and critically really well received and successful. But again, we're always pushing them forward, and it's like, well, how would we change that? You know, what would we do for the future? And that's the kind of thing about being brave and sort of being part of Firesprite is helping us grow and helping us come on that journey for the future. You know, for the next 3 decades, which is you know, something I'm very passionate about, that we are building something long term and sustainable.
wow, where did the name Firesprite come from? I was just quite interested in that.
Oh my God, this was going back 300 yards down the road where we, for many years, almost for the first year, we didn't actually have a name. Oh, we had a different name, a completely different name for the studio at the time. And we always knew it'd be temporary. It was just something to kind of get going. And I remember we were struggling. We had a top 10 list of things, sort of, about, what name should it be, and everyone had their own favourites, and we had them up by the wall, and people would dot them or whatever as they came in. And Firesprite kind of came up at, and it almost was a bit overlooked to start with. It resonated. It was really, really cool. And I think the reference to it, to give a bit of context to it, we've always had, even going back along those years, a track record of delivering sort of, graphical showcases. So, making something look amazing on that new console, it was always something that we were very prided ourselves, our art direction, our technical ability of delivering high quality polished artwork and art assets. And the whole thing about Firesprite was almost about sort of setting your screen on fire in that sense, so the sprite parts of, I guess, going back to the old school days, but Fire Poly didn't really have the same ring to it. So but that's the kind of make of the name really, and sort of the logo itself is really cool, sort of it's I think there's a little bit of an adaptation of the old strong graphic design pedigree of the Northwest, the sort of that Wipeout-esque feel in terms of the F. But then, lots of new things that sort of come along with that as well, which kind of made up the whole. And when we did the logo test on it, it really, really worked, and it just immediately started to resonate with people. And
that's cool. I really like that. Okay, so we've definitely touched on this, but I'm going to ask it probably more in a more framed question. But obviously, we've been talking about the pedigree of the Northwest and how good Liverpool is as kind of a hub, and how good the games industry is up here. I think that for people, especially outside of the UK, there can be a little bit of a stereotype or a thought that everything's all down south. I completely disagree with that because I've lived up north for most of my life, so I think that's complete nonsense, and you can definitely go outside the M25. But I suppose it's just really good to hear someone talk so positively about the games industry in the north. And what do you think about the games industry in the north in general, and what it offers outside of Guildford, Leamington Spa?
And I think you raise a really good point. I think there is a perception, probably internationally and nationally as well, that it's a really healthy and vibrant games sort of ecosystems in Guildford. Certainly Brighton seems to be sort of going through a bit of a renaissance again as well, and this is great. Newcastle as well. I mean, there's some quality teams in every sort of area of the UK, and I think I sometimes get the same feeling that the Northwest is overlooked, and and that kind of is a personal sort of frustration for me, because going back to what I was originally saying, this was the kind of birth of it all, really. Signosis was a footprint that spanned the globe, in the golden age of gaming. Ocean was sort of almost second to that as well over in Manchester, and the titles that we were making at that time embodied that as well, particularly with things like Wipeout, and that, like I say, they were culturally significant. It wasn't just about the success or whatever, it was about telling the fabric of where you were from, and I think those kind of games really captured it and did it absolutely brilliantly. And I think that's coming again, and I think there's I don't know, personally I'm quite tenacious about sort of my vision and my goal to see that happen again in the Northwest. And we've if you look at the wider north, we've certainly seen that. Sumo have done a fantastic job, in terms of what they do and the scale of growth that they've gone to. Debbie over at Team 17 is awesome, and again, completely different. And again, Firesprite, we're a different kind of studio that does those strategic projects and new IP. And in the Northwest, I think the time's right now for that sort of renaissance to happen again. And like I say, there's some really high quality independent small teams. There's other sort of similar sized studios to ours growing now in Liverpool. When you consider that as a whole ecosystem, and that's what you've got to look at really in terms of the region itself, that's where it gets exciting, because that's where it's opportunity, and if you've got the right vision, that's where you can drive that forward. That's exactly what we have, and this is why we're growing so quickly. Because we know what we're about, we know what we do, we know what we deliver, we know what we're great at, being brave, pushing new platforms, pushing great games on new technologies. And we've got a great team that already does that, and now we're looking for people to come in and help us grow and grow the business, and really establishing that for many years to come. I think there was a kind of weird disconnect between the industry and universities, and I think it's got so much better recently. So you've got some of the best universities in the northwest, Liverpool itself, Manchester, going all across that M62 corridor. So we've got some incredible graduates, talent that traditionally would go off to America or London or move out of the area. And now we're seeing more and more we're retaining some of the very, very best talent in the northwest, as well as bringing people back over who've had the experiences of working in Canada on some of the biggest games in the world, and are now wanting to come back. And that's always a telling sign for me as well, and that's back to the northwest, because perhaps they might have started their career here, or they've kind of already got sort of some roots or some connection with Liverpool, so I think that's an encouraging sign, because I think that perception's changing now. So I don't feel that as much now in terms of when we're recruiting, and Firesprite itself, the type of work that we do, we can't really ever talk about, which is unfortunate. We've always been slightly off radar because we do, sensitive sort of project work for the future of things to come, which sounds really grandiose, doesn't it? But that is the kind of the nature of what we do as a studio and a team. We're going to start changing that now, and our new IP, like the Persistence, was a great way to say, actually we're here, because that's something we can talk about. And like I say, new IP is always going to be a big drive for what we do, as a business, as well as our strategic projects. So I think the perception still exists, but in terms of the effect of that perception, I'm feeling that less and less. And actually, I think it's now turning to more excitement. I think there's more and more people sort of looking northwest, looking at us, quite frankly, as a studio, and I think that's a really exciting place for us to be. So it doesn't concern me at all anymore. It used to annoy me, but no, I think actually it's just great that the UK's got a healthy game development.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that there's a lot more opportunity going on, or at least there's a lot more perceived opportunity going on in North now, especially like you were saying with universities and things like that. I think that there are some amazing universities, some great games courses, and if you can look to attract those guys from similar areas, when they already know the northwest, they already know other places where they've studied, it means you can retain them in the same area and keep that cycle going, I suppose. Absolutely,
yeah. It's really important, and I think we've only sort of actively started doing that in the last 2 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I think the nature of our work, always required the sort of higher levels of experience, if you like. So it was a risk for us to kind of lean into that direction, but it's something I knew we absolutely had to do, because you need, new people bring new ideas, and, especially if they don't necessarily have, all the kind of baggage is the wrong word, but that sort of background of the industry.
Predisposed negativity.
That's a lovely replacement for baggage, I like that. So yeah, I think you need new people to really keep sort of fueling that, and you've got to get the balance right as well. So we've done it in a very good way, I think, actually. On a specific project that sort of we bring people in where they absolutely learn all the values of production, release, technology, different ways of looking at a problem. A brilliant sort of project actually that we've got in that's really prolific. And then a lot of those people will go out onto the bigger game teams after a year, 2 years, and that sort of pathway in has been really effective for us. So, you know, it's something that you absolutely have to do. And like you say, you know, if you've got a connection to the area and the region, and that applies to the new people coming through, but it also applies to, you know, people who've now sort of, you know, gone across the globe but started their careers, you know, and there's many of those, you know, and I see that more and more actually coming out of the universities. It's almost like the university sort of final projects are almost like, you know, mini releasable games done by small teams of people, and it's awesome to see that, because, you know, I think that's been one of the biggest changes, because they're already used to working as a team at that point, whereas beforehand it was quite individual specialisms. So, you know, what we need is people, you know, really who will come and work together as a team and understand, even if you're in a discipline like code, you're able to interface and understand the problems of design or the pipeline of art, and you work together like that and work cross-discipline in that way. And I think sort of, you know, seeing how those kind of, you know, graduates are coming out of universities with generally almost a releasable product at the end of the final year course is really encouraging and amazing. I've seen some really almost, you know, very high quality sort of small games that could be deployed on store, and a lot of the times they'll do that as well.
Yeah, so if someone was looking to move to Liverpool or the Northwest as a region, you'd say it's thriving.
I'd say it's thriving, absolutely. Yeah. It really is. I think there's a great opportunity. You know, I think studios looking to relocate, you know, particularly in games, you know, there's just, you know, it's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of talent in the area. It's a brilliant place to live, and the cost base is comparatively low compared to you know, Guildford, which we haven't talked about, and areas down south. So that makes it very competitive, and the talent base is high. So, you know, that's, you know, some very basic factors that can only add up to being a very good thing. So
yeah.
There's huge, like I say, it's excitement and opportunity is what I would describe Liverpool and the wider Northwest as. You know, those are the two key words, particularly in our industry in games.
So, what's your favourite thing about Liverpool?
What's my favourite thing about Liverpool?
Yeah.
Well, you see, I'm from Manchester.
So Liverpool is terrible and you want to move entirely to Manchester?
No, not at all. And no, I love Liverpool. I think one of my favourite things, you know, I love the waterfront. I love where we're based as Firesprite, because, you know, for many years a lot of us have come from the big kind of corporates or whatever, and we were out on technology parks, you know, probably 4 or 5 miles backwards that way. And they're lovely places, but a little bit soulless in terms of, you know, there's not that much in terms of you can walk out and go and visit. Whereas here, you can leave the front door of Firesprite and within sort of 6 minutes you're on the Albert Dock, and you can walk around the waterfront there or go running around there. You've got Liverpool One at the bottom of the road. You've got, like, you know, the world's amount of bars and sort of clubs, restaurants, quality restaurants, and, you know, it's not huge, but that's not in a negative way. It's like you can literally walk from one side to the other to, you know, I guess I always call it the financial district on the other side over there, but that's like 15 minutes away and you've covered the majority of the city centre sort of, you know, around there. Even though the scale of it's lovely, and you've got history as well, you know, like, and I think that's a you know, another really great thing, you know. It just, even though it is a big city, it doesn't feel like it, you know what I mean? It's very friendly, it's, you know, very open, people are amazing, you know, really welcoming. And it's just, you know, for a big city, it's very intimate, and you can sort of, you know, travel around it, and there's just everything that you would need.
Yeah.
And if you want to go further afield into the countryside, you're like an hour away from Wales, and
I think there's a lot to be said about cities in the north for a very similar reason. They've all got, I think they've all got quite a similar vibe. Manchester's a lot bigger.
Manchester's definitely a lot bigger, and sort of, you know, I suppose the architecture is kind of almost a bit more gothic in that sense, but, you know, special in its, you know, in its own right, and I think Liverpool's very different again. But yeah, you know, they're both amazing places with amazing histories, and you know, like I say, with Liverpool you've got that sense of it being, and the security of it being a big city with all the amenities that go with it, but it doesn't feel like that. You know, you can, you know, you're able to walk everywhere, everything's very friendly. You know, it's been really good for us because, you know, we're attracting, you know, we've got to attract some of the best sort of, you know, people coming out of universities sort of the new generation, people who want to be the best and push themselves and help us create things that will, hopefully change the world of gaming. So it's great for us to be here because Liverpool helps us offer a hell of a lot, from that point of view, especially being in the city centre. Yeah.
Agreed. I think that with a lot of studios, when you go there, again, they can be sat in industrial parks on the way out, and they've got lovely studios, of course, but where you're going for lunch. There's no one way to get into the games industry. There's no one path that everybody follows in order to get into a specific point. So how did you get into the games industry?
How did I get into the games industry? Oh my word. So that was like a left field path. So I went to university. I did an art degree. So that was my kind of background and education. And then when I left that, I had a load of friends who worked at Ocean Software and Infograms, and over in a place called Castlefield. And one of them just said, there's an interview there, sort of they were building up the test department, so that's how I kind of first started. Generally, I was always a gamer, so, I'd queued up for my first PlayStation 1, I was a massive Wipeout fan, and, I kind of had my knowledge of games. At the time, I think I was labouring on hotels or something like that, and I thought, right, I need to try and get into this. So I went for the interview, and actually got the gig, which was awesome. Joined their test team, and within 2 days I was on the product evaluation team over there. So basically Ocean became Infograms, which was a big publisher at the time, and game developers around the world would pitch stuff to them, and there was a small team of 4 or 5 people that worked with production that evaluated all their kind of concepts and said, right, well, this one's interesting, that one's interesting, let's have a look at it further. And that's what we did, and then I kind of went from there and sort of started to work more closely with development. So one of my first big games was a PC RPG called Silver, and I was sat with the development team, with the producers, sort of helping out, testing while that was going through the sort of final phases. And then I moved over to software creations, and I was basically doing production jobs from there and working on things like FIFA and sort of big sports franchises, and lucky enough to have worked with a lot of very talented people really across the Northwest, and then came to join Sony at Liverpool, and then thought, right, I'm going to leave the comfort of the corporate blanket and set up on my own. So that was the kind of journey really, and I think you have to. My background's generally production or game direction is that production to game director was the sort of path that I was on, and then studio director. You have to wear many hats, careers really, wearing many hats on many developments. But it's exciting, and I love the business basically. So it's creating great experiences that hopefully people around the world will share.
Excellent. That's all you ever want, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It is.
Did you know you'd want to start up your own studio at some point?
I think I'd always had a burning desire, to be fair, actually, I think I've always had a kind of entrepreneurial nature to do that, and I think I'm the sort of person that would live with regret if I never would have tried it. So I think that was a big driving factor for me. I think I had a lot to learn, and so working with big teams, I've been very lucky to work with big teams and big franchises, and at PlayStation and Software Creations and Ocean, and sort of almost like cut my teeth and learned all my lessons there, and but I think underlying that I've always had a drive to actually say, right, okay, could we do something, could we set up something special and create something sort of that's really different, and I think Firesprite is, I've always had a desire to do it.
If you're going to do another job in the studio, if you weren't manager director, what would you do?
Oh, gosh, that's a tough question. Everything, and
you don't have to be good at it. Just like, what would you like to have a go at?
I don't know. I love game direction and working with design and creative teams. I think getting the creative challenges right is still, and always will be the most important thing, and especially early on. So, it's having the the language and the experience to know how to focus in on what's important about your game. What is it that makes it special? Why is it going to stand out? What are those cool mechanics that's just going to make it feel amazing on a second level, or why am I going to keep coming back to it every day, or whatever it might be. So I think for me that's where I would probably spend all my time if I could. I still get to do quite a little bit of that now. So yeah.
And if you weren't in games, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh my goodness. Gosh, I haven't even thought of that one.
No, you're just trying to find a way into games.
I don't know. I think I've always telling stories, something around that. I think taking somebody on a journey in an entertainment sense, or I don't know, something along those lines. I think it would always be related to games. I'd always be pushing to what if we did it, made it a bit more interactive or something if I'm on a TV set. But, so no, I think that definitely is my calling.
Looking at Firesprite as its studio, when you were setting it up, what did you think the studio had to have in terms of the culture or the office or anything like that?
I think the values and the culture was probably the first thing that sort of jumps to mind when thinking about that. It always had to drive, in terms of the values, we always had to kind of drive technically forward in terms of we'd always have the principles of great mechanics, great games. So we have to do those well. You can't, if you don't get those right, you can't build on anything, if you like. So I think that's all principally really, really important. And then I think it's that technical twist or that strategic twist. We always want to bring the world's first to something. So any kind of idea that takes something further or adds something new to the genre. So, with the persistence, knowing that, it's a psychological sci-fi survival horror in virtual reality, which we know works really well. But we brought something new to that. We linked your friends' phones and tablets to that experience to create something social. Now those two things don't ever normally go together because, with a survival horror you play on isolation, you play on sort of, that sense of being alone and vulnerable. And, I think we developed a language of almost cooperation to sort of enhance that experience for the VR player. And it was just, something that shouldn't have worked together, but it brought something new to that genre. And I think that's what we sort of really strive for as a studio. And that was both from a creative point of view in terms of we've got to figure out the language of what is it like to bring your friends into the mix of a survival horror game when you've got a headset on. Do you trust them? Do you sort of take their advice? Do you ignore them? And sort of playing around with the psychology of that worked really, really well. And then you've also got the technical aspect of that, so it's linking seamlessly linking your phones and your tablets to the VR player's game and experience, and sort of allowing them to almost shape the experience for you as a VR player. And I think that kind of encapsulates what values we try and sort of have as Firesprite, which is it's look at that as a creative, not a problem, it's a creative opportunity, let's use that word again, to bring something new to a genre, to an experience, and then the technology that will help you do that and enable it and facilitate it. And I think that kind of captures what we're always trying to do. We're always trying to bring something new to a genre, a world's first on a platform. That's the push for being at Firesprite. It's about being brave. It's about sort of bringing those new things to the table, because that makes us different.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we're striving to do.
No, very much so.
Yeah.
Was that something you always knew you wanted to do from the start?
I think so. Yeah, I think from the very, very start we've always taken on projects. I almost raise the projects that we take in on the basis of is that creatively awesome? Are we going to deliver an amazing sort of gameplay experience to it? Is that something that we can add something new to? Is it strategically sort of part of what we would look at as Firesprite? And by that I mean, is it doing something sort of new technology based? Is it doing something that somebody else hasn't done before? So those are the kind of things that we do. We take those from concept to completion. And that's what it very much is part of the values of Firesprite is being able to take those kind of projects on, and not everyone can or is even, we're quite privileged because we're trusted to take those kind of things on from platform holders, and we also get to do it ourselves with new IP. So we're in a great sort of place in terms of how we approach that. Yeah.
No, it's very cool. So when you are looking at these projects, like you were saying, it's really important to know what you can bring to the table with it. Is there anything else that you think about when you're looking, like someone's coming to you with a whole host of projects?
I think it's got to, it happens. I think it's got to be exciting as well. It's got to be exciting for us as a studio, and it's hard to put a kind of a statement to that, if you like. Whether that is the IP itself, if it's one of our strategic projects for a platform holder. So it's got to work for us as Firesprite on a number of levels, and we've got to be confident, we can actually sort of say, right, yeah, we can deliver that to the quality that we would be happy as a studio to release. And that's the kind of symbiotic relationship we have with our strategic projects. Often that's not our IP, so we're working on other people's intellectual property, or we're creating intellectual property for that platform holder or client. But we put as much care and attention to that as we do when we create our own intellectual property. It's like, we really invest all our sort of, hearts and souls and passion into that sort of, that universe that might not necessarily have been one that we came up with in the first place. And there's that is the lovely symbiotic relationship in between all the projects that we have in Firesprite, is that, often when we're working on our strategic projects for platform holders, we're learning sort of, we're bringing production processes, passion, creativity, all the tricks that we apply for our own intellectual property, and we bring them back over onto that, and vice versa, in lessons that can learn back out for us for the future. And that's the healthy relationship that we have between all the projects in the studio, and that's, again, I think is something quite unique. So yeah, I think we're careful in terms of which projects that we pick. They've got to excite us. They've got to do something different. They've got to allow us to try something new, and that's our drive as a studio.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
No, that's an excellent. Very good answer. The atmosphere for Firesprite in general, I imagine, is incredibly important. Obviously, we've already talked about the culture to a certain extent. So, for you, what do you think makes it such a great place to work?
I think it's atmosphere is hard to quantify.
It is really difficult.
Yeah,
it's like atmosphere, culture, they're a little bit wishy-washy.
Yeah, they are, but they are distinct. Like that. I get that. Actually, it's the little moments for me. I think it's when, from my point of view, it's almost walking around the studio, and it's the little things where I can sort of I can see like one of the designers from one team and having a chat about a creative problem with a coder from another team in the kitchen making a cup of tea or whatever, and just noticing the sort of way that they're talking about it and the passion that they've got for that thing. And I just see little it's almost out of meeting loops and out of things like that, and it's those little things I can see where actually that's where we've got the atmosphere really right, because it's kind of like the excitement when they're tackling something that's for something really big and amazing, and they've got that kind of energy without the pressure, because sometimes the pressure can fold that back down in terms of atmosphere. So for me, it's just walking around and capturing those little moments actually of people talking about what it is that they're working on, and sometimes they'll do that with me, less and less these days. I don't know why, but but between themselves, in just little sort of moments around the studio. And I think from an atmosphere point of view, that points to a sort of kind of related thing, a really healthy culture of sort of being able to talk about it. And then there's other things that we do. We do the social events, I think, are really awesome, and we've just got a really great team. I'm really proud of them all.
Oh, that's good.
It's a very good atmosphere within the studio that sort of is created by proxy of them.
There's a lot of cross-project communication and things like that.
And again, this is all stuff we always look at and should improve going forward, as a studio. And sometimes with the nature of our projects and the nature of the building, we sometimes have to have things on different floors, so we have to work quite hard to kind of sort of make that cohesive again. And even just little things like drinks on Friday after work, and doing our sort of social events twice a year. The next one's Christmas as well, which I need to prepare for. But it's the smaller moments for me. I think that's where you really notice things like the atmosphere, just walking around. And sort of sometimes development studios, you can be quiet, and then all of a sudden they've got a flurry of activities. You've got like 4 people around a desk discussing something, or trying to tackle a problem, and it's just the fact that people are able to do that, because I've been in many other studios where it is just kind of all email or all that kind of thing, whereas it's actually hard to book a meeting room here at the moment. It's but then you get people on desks and sort of talking over things, and it's very focused. It's and it doesn't feel like there's a pressure that's driving it. It's more like I'm looking for the best solution, and I think that's the lovely thing about the atmosphere for me. That's right. And I think that's it, and for us, it's lovely because you get, I hate that kind of call centre feel that you do get in some places, and for me it's the little flurries that happen, even when you're just walking around, and I could see it's almost like a magnet as well, when 2-3 people are on it, then everyone walking past seems to sort of join in as well. So well, that's how we work things out a lot of the time. It's still very verbal.
Yeah. I suppose you're going to have a lot of that with the sort of projects you're working on as well, if they are quite cutting edge, and there might be something new that you've got to talk about with a lot of people.
We're always doing that, right? And it takes sometimes a bit of a deeper discussion than just sort of emailing up a load of points, because you've got to think about it. That's the hard thing. So we call it, doing a deeper dive on like, what are our technical risks, what are our creative risks, and how do we then sort of create a framework, really, which is what I think we have done reasonably well, where people can actually discuss that in a bit more depth and detail, and then take the actions from it, and that can happen organically, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
So, kind of key things that we would look for, in terms of people who will be brave, aren't afraid of trying new things, and it is quite a difficult thing that, you haven't got a point of reference if you're doing something new, and that's quite a good thing, and I suppose it's knowing then as well that they've got the communication to actually reach out, because there is a team of people around, and it's knowing that you'll look at it, think about the problem, research it a little bit, reach out, and then sort of feed back in and create, people who are proactive enough to be brave, communicate, understand that sort of like process, and then bring that back, because most of the time we're pioneering and we're pushing forward in a new area, and I think it's people who find that exciting and engage with that going forward. I think communication's a big one. Ability to communicate, not just in a work sense, in a sort of being in an office sense as well. Friendly and sort of approachable is a great qualities to have. Having the right skills and the right sort of and the ability to want to grow, and sort of learn more, because you're going to be exposed to a lot here, particularly at Firesprite. We do work on some very, very big titles, and that they are amazing projects, definitely globally recognised intellectual properties, and when we release our own IP, that does really, really well as well from that perspective. The working within those kind of frameworks, so it's like you're given the opportunity to work in the universe of something amazing. Where would you take that? Where are you going to push that forward to, and sort of what you're going to bring along with it, and where do you want to go as an individual in the company? Because it's something that we look at quite a lot here as well. Like what is your journey through Firesprite? Where do you want to actually get to at the end of that? So somebody you can think in terms of in 6 years' time I want to be going down this point, and that's more so we can support than anything else. So if somebody wants to be a lead in the future, or a game director in the future, what can we do to help you get there? Generally people who are very self-motivated, proactive, communicative, not afraid to be brave, not afraid to work on some of the biggest things in the world, wanting to push forward and be their best self.
I imagine with the variety of things you get to work on and all the sort of cutting edge technologies and stuff, you must have pretty good retention of staff, I imagine?
We do. Our retention's really high, actually. Yes. It is very high as a studio. So we were looking at that the other day, actually, over the past few years. So yeah, the core team that started, by and large, most of them are still here from when we were building those IKEA desks.
Wow. So I imagine it was really important in looking at that progression of people through the studio.
Exactly, and that's a big thing, and something that we're sort of again needing to improve and sort of like put in. But I talk to individuals about and talk to the leads about, and that's kind of understanding where you want to be in the future, not in any other sense, but what can we do to help you get there. We want people to spend their full careers at Firesprite. It's that's what I'm building here. It's not sort of just on a project timeline. It's where do you want to be in 5 years time, where do you want to be in 10 years time, particularly for the people who are coming into the games industry for the first time. So yeah, that's kind of how I want people to be, and to look at us as well. It's a long-term sort of studio, and people who are brave and want to push forward and want to be involved in some of the best games in the world. We can offer a hell of a lot. Like I say, opportunity is a big thing, for everybody in the studio, and people who want to come and help us grow the business, and that's what it is. We are growing the business, and I want people to join us and help us do that, and their own careers and their own development sort of benefit from that. You will get to work on some of the biggest IPs in the world, or create a new IP and change the world that way.
What is the favourite project that you've worked on in the studio? And I know you probably can't be specific about it because of secrecy. But you can just say it was awesome if you want to.
That is the slightly annoying thing about the position we're in, because we do work our strategic projects, which cover all our partner projects, are generally sort of unannounced or confidential. But we have worked with, I'm very proud to have worked, we worked directly with the Sony Tokyo team, which was quite unique. I think that was one of the first times that that they'd worked with an external team so far away, and they were an amazing team to work with, very talented. In fact, you can see the welcome or the congratulations card up there on the show from when we gold mastered, and that was our first game. I think we gold mastered. Wow. So that was brilliant, and they made such a huge effort to work with us in terms of communicating in English and sort of writing all the code in that sort of way as well. And I'm very proud of us to have worked on such a diverse kind of set of games. Whether it be the Playroom, we made a mobile game, our first mobile game called Run Sackboy Run. And the game that sort of did something new. We were unlocking costumes between mobile and PlayStation 4, I think it was at the time. So that was our first foray into the mobile market, and again, Playroom was kind of pre-installed on all the PlayStation 4s, which is a lovely thing for us to be a part of. I think Run Sackboy Run went over 10-11 million installs as well for our first mobile game. So again, we touch things on quite a big scale. There's 100 million, 90 million PS4s out there, and so we're working on things that go to a wide audience in that sense. And then working on Playroom VR for hardware launch as well. So, again, Playroom was for PlayStation 4 launch, VR was for hardware launch. So we've always been there at the forefront, day and date, on new platforms every time. We've been doing that for decades, and that's, I'd love to be able to tell you about the new things that are coming, and you can probably get a sense of the scale of it, because I've already said, we're over 100 people, we're we have 6 projects in development. Unfortunately, they are pretty much all unannounced. So, but yeah, there's some really, massive, exciting things in there, both doing what we do as a studio, doing brand new things with technology, things that have never been done before, and working on some of the biggest sort of intellectual properties in the world, and also looking forward to the future. And we've got some great stories around all of those things. But yeah, I think there'll be some announcements probably for the first time on some of our strategic projects, probably towards sort of the first calendar quarter of next year.
Yeah.
So that's when we'll actually be able to start talking a little bit more about what we're doing at the moment. But it is massively exciting time for us.
So future in Firesprite looks bright then?
Looks very bright. Yes, it does indeed.
No, to be fair, it'd be a bit odd if you were like, no, it's a bit rubbish, we're also hiring loads of lots of people.
Yeah, exactly. That would be unusual. Well, we do have a pretty, actually one of the big bits of work we've been doing over the last year is kind of establishing a solid 5-year plan. I mean, you wouldn't, a 5-year plan, but you visit it every month pretty much. So it's a rolling plan. So, but basically, we do have some big ambitions. I'm not hell bent on going sort of huge sort of numbers. It's quality is what we're looking for, particularly over the next 2-3 years. I think to go up to around 230 to 250. And that's all in and locked on the plan as well. So that gives you some sense of the scale that we'll be going to as well. So
it's going to be like a continued expansion.
Continued expansion, but we never get into the position where it's not looking for numbers. It's all like everything in games. It's always about people. Working with the best people, and that's what we're looking to do. And that never forces our hand just to kind of hire people in, if you like. So.
I've got one final question, which is, what is your one favourite thing about Firesprite?
Oh, my one favourite thing about Firesprite. I think it is actually. I think it's two. I think it's the fact. Well, it's probably 3. It's 4 really. It's we're not afraid to create new technology. We're incredibly creative. I'm very ambitious, and we've got a very ambitious plan, and we are brave. We're not afraid to get involved in new things and bringing new things to established genres or technology platforms.
Awesome. That's all my questions.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
That's really good.
Thank you for listening to the Games Jobs Direct podcast. This episode was recorded, produced and edited by me, Abbie Dickinson. For any questions, comments or suggestions, or if your studio would like to get involved with any future episodes, you can send an email over to Abbie, that's Abbie, at gamesjobsdirect.com. Special thanks this episode goes to Graeme Ankers, Becky Brown and Catherine Burney at Firesprite. To find out more about Firesprite, head over to firesprite.com or check out their social media accounts at Firesprite. You'll be able to find all current vacancies at firesprite.com/jobs or on gamesjobsdirect.com. You can follow Games Jobs Direct on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. Our handle is at Games Jobs Direct. The music in this episode is from Incompetech by Kevin MacLeod. To find out more, head to incompetech.com. Next month, I'll be chatting to Social Point, the Barcelona-based mobile game developers. We'll be back in March with our new episode. Thanks for listening.